I'd like to ask you a couple more questions about Car Giant, if I may. You mentioned that you want to purchase a small amount of their land. How much is that as a percentage figure?
As a percentage of
As
what?
a percentage of their total land for the Phase 1A development.
I was going to say let's and I'll let David get into the detail. But yes, there's two stages to this. So just for ease of reference, let's call it 1A and 1B. And 1A, which we've also called the Northern Arc Union Road, it seems to have had umpteen different names. This is the one where we will require some relatively small parts of Car Giant's site, and David can explain those. Then 1B is the bulk of the Car Giant site, which, when it ultimately comes forward, clearly if we're going to develop that, Car Giant won't be able to stay, and that's what we've got to look at some sort of future agreement about. One or other of us will have to develop it. Car Giant's business will have to go somewhere else. So let's just deal with the 1A first, and the little packets of land where we're trying to absolutely minimise the amount we need to take. And we have spent months looking at this, about how we can actually design our plans so that we really do not take a significant amount.
But what percentage?
So
what percentage for the 1A?
Do you know what percentage it is of?
So I think within we've issued what we call a dotted red line plan, which is the plan that we're using to go out and spend time consulting in detail with occupiers and landowners. It's a dotted line because we are still refining our final plans that will inform how much land we actually need to take. So the dotted line obviously contains a wider area than we think is likely to be necessary once we conclude our plans, probably in a few months' time. Within our Phase 1A plans, in other words, our early delivery phase, which is associated directly with our Housing Infrastructure Fund investment, we are potentially going to be looking to acquire around 25% of Car Giant's land ownership. However, I can see the expressions, very little of that is actually operational land for Car Giant's main business. So a large amount of that land that we are looking to acquire for Phase 1A development is long leasehold interest that Car Giant have in non-related functions.
Well, you say that, well, what percentage of that is operational land?
Well, we think certainly well under 10%, probably closer to 5%.
So 10% of the
and
whole of the Car Giant's land?
Yeah, and we're looking
so you're saying 10% you want to acquire 25% of Car Giant's land for Phase 1A, of which 15% is non-operational and 10% is operational.
No, I don't want to be held very specifically to numbers because, as I say, our plans are evolving. But what I am saying is that within our published dotted red line, it is about 25%, but the vast majority of that is non-operational. It's land that Car Giant own as investments. It's got other businesses that are not connected directly with the Car Giant operation. So if you look at the Car Giant operation, which is about retail space, it's about operational factory-style units where they process vehicles and so forth, we're not looking to take that in our Phase 1A plans. It's primarily land that Car Giant own as investment, but is non-operational. Some of it is road space, which they use to what they call a test track, to test vehicles, and we're confident that there are alternatives locally that can be used for testing vehicles.
You're confident. Have you identified?
It's things like car
Have you identified alternative localities for the test track then?
Yeah, we certainly have.
Okay, can you say what they are?
Well, no, not
Where?
here and now,
Where?
without site plans and so forth.
Right.
But we've very carefully looked at how we can avoid impacting the operational business of Car Giant, which is why, as I say, the amount of operational land that we may be looking to acquire for early phase development is going to be very marginal indeed. And we're quite confident that we can evidence that this will not impact in any detrimental way to their business.
How many homes do you plan to build on that 25% of Car Giant's land that you want to purchase for Phase 1A? What do you propose to do with that land?
So our first phase development, we think, will deliver around about 3,000 homes.
And that's not just car giant land, though.
No, that's the whole of
That's
phase 1A.
phase 1A.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, how much? My question was, how many homes are you planning to build on the 25% of car giants land that you want to purchase? I mean, what precisely do you plan to do with just the land that you want to purchase from car giant for phase 1A? How many homes and what else are you going to do with
Well, I'm not going to give a figure to that at the moment because, as I say, our plans are still being worked through. The reason that we're consulted
sure,
within this
okay.
dotted red line boundary is to understand as precisely as we can what the needs of the various landowners and businesses are, and to use that process to finally align or secure an alignment for the infrastructure we need and the alignment for the precise
Okay,
alignment for
but,
development plots. But we're a considerable way away from
Just,
lodging a planning
I don't
application.
have an awful lot of time, so I just want to get an answer from you. I mean, you mentioned 3,000 homes for the whole of phase 1A. Now, how much of phase 1A in terms of land is that 25% you want to purchase from car giant? I mean, is the 25% of car giant's land just a small part of phase 1A, or is it a large part of phase 1A?
Phase 1A is a combination of development plots which will be largely residential development, not exclusively, but largely residential development, utilities infrastructure and roads, hard infrastructure. And, the land that we need to acquire that currently is in ownership or the long leasehold interest of car giant is land that will either be developed for housing or other things, or it will be land that's required to, because we need to construct the new east-west access road through it.
Okay.
But we haven't, for example, decided exactly where an energy centre would go. So an energy centre might end up on that a piece of car giant land or a piece of other land. There's network
Okay,
rail
so
land, there's other land.
You're not
ownership, so-
certain yet about what is going to be on that land.
Especially
Right,
since we are
right.
still, or would like to be engaged in negotiation with car giant about
Okay.
how we can accommodate their particular needs.
Right. Let me ask you another question, Chair. Now, I understand that in a meeting of the Assembly here on the 11th of June, you said that provided we can crack on and work around the car giant land ownership, you could start phase 1A. Is that correct?
Yes.
It is. Okay, so you could start phase 1A without this purchase of car giant's land.
Sorry.
Is that
So
what you meant by that?
What I meant by that comment was that provided we can actually come to a sensible accommodation about the small parts of land that we actually need, which we genuinely do not believe would impact on car giant business, we can get cracking and car giant can carry on running their business. That's the ideal position that I would like to get to.
Okay, so that means what? So did you mean by that you want to purchase that 25%?
We do need some small parts of car giant's land.
25% of car giant's land.
25% of their overall land holding, yes, but not 25% of their car business land.
Okay, but that's
Yeah,
10% of the land you want, approximately
up
would
to
be
10%, but we haven't confirmed that yet.
So
because
not,
we can't
okay, right,
engage.
well, just coming back to
Yeah.
sort of confirm what David said there earlier. Now, have you already started a compulsory purchase order process for that land? Have you already initiated the CPO process?
We have started a process. We haven't. I'm not quite sure whether I'm not sufficient of a CPO expert to know what counts as a CPO process.
David, are
I mean,
you
what we've
a
actually
sufficient
done is
expert
publish
in
our-
CPOs
We have
to
published
answer the
our
question?
red line.
We've not issued a resolution to move to compulsory purchase, but what we have done is we've done a detailed land referencing exercise, and we have issued what's called Section 5A notices, which are the notices that have gone to all of the interests within what I've referred to as the dotted red line boundary. That is an important part of a process that any agency or organisation with compulsory purchase powers needs to do, because unless we can evidence the fact that we've spoken in detail to all of the local interests that are within our plan area about what are their business needs, what are their concerns, what are their requirements, unless we can evidence that we've been
Right.
through that process,
So that
then
is
it's going
part
to
of
be
the
quite difficult
process.
to move into the
You've
more
started
formal
it.
process, which will start at some point in the next period. So we have started the essential preliminary works, which could ultimately lead to compulsory purchase. Is
Right.
the answer.
Okay. Thank you for your answers.